Welcome to this explainer. When you think of ancient scriptures, you probably picture dusty scrolls, mystical stories, and maybe a pretty heavy dose of cryptic religious dogma. But today we're looking at volume 23 of the Theravāda Buddhist Suttanta Piṭaka. It's a text known as the Paṭisambhidāmagga, and what is absolutely fascinating about this work is that it doesn't read like a religious scripture at all. It reads much more like a highly structured, remarkably modern scientific manual. This is a profound piece of ancient epistemology, and we're going to unpack exactly why scholars today view it as a brilliantly systematic breakdown of human reality.
Just consider this for a moment. What if an ancient text was actually a highly advanced manual for cognitive science? We are talking about a text that is literally over 2,000 years old, put together in an era we usually associate with myth rather than methodology. Yet, researchers and scholars point out that it possesses this deep psychological profundity. It doesn't ask you for blind faith. Instead, it presents a highly logical, completely rational, and systematic breakdown of human consciousness. It really challenges our basic assumptions about antiquity, showing us that trying to understand the mind has always required a rigorous, almost scientific approach.
Section 1. The Bridge of Wisdom, Sāriputta's Framework. To really understand this text, we first need to look at its architect, the Buddhist chief disciple of wisdom, Sāriputta. He recognized a really crucial necessity. To truly grasp enlightenment and the nature of reality, you couldn't rely on abstract, poetic concepts alone. You needed a highly structured system, an objective framework to map out the exact pathways of the mind. Historically, this text is the ultimate missing link. On one hand, we have the Suttas, which are the early discourses of the Buddha. Think of the Suttas like reading a beautiful, narrative biography of a great philosopher. They're conversational, descriptive, and they rely heavily on metaphors to teach. Then, on the other hand, we have the Abhidhamma, the later texts, which are basically pure systematic logic. If the Suttas are a biography, the Abhidhamma is like reading that exact same philosopher's raw, unfiltered data spreadsheets. The Paṭisambhidāmagga is the vital bridge connecting those two worlds. It takes the descriptive stories of the earlier period and starts applying the rigorous, analytical frameworks that would totally define the later period.
Section 2. 4 Pillars of Analysis Redefining Awakening. And this brings us to a pretty radical core thesis of the text. There's this common assumption out there that spiritual awakening is just about sitting quietly and having some vague, mystical, internal experience. But the Paṭisambhidāmagga aggressively counters that idea. It argues that true awakening actually requires the ability to logically analyze and clearly communicate that experience. Basically, you haven't fully mastered the mind unless you can deconstruct it and explain it systematically to someone else.
These ancient monks were essentially acting like advanced analysts and expert communicators, and you can see this clearly in the Paṭisambhidātore, which are the 4 types of analytical knowledge. Let's break them down. First, Atha. Think of this as deep root-cause analysis, the ability to dissect meaning and consequences. Second, Dhamma. That's understanding the underlying natural laws or the core phenomena at play. Third, Niruddhi. This is having absolute mastery over language and terminology so you can accurately articulate these truths without any distortion. And finally, Patibbana. That's the sharp wit and dynamic fluency to communicate this knowledge to anyone on the fly like a master debater. This text insists that enlightenment demands all 4. Knowledge just isn't complete until it's fully structured and communicable. Section 3. A Map of the Mind, the Nanakatha Cartography. We're going to shift focus now into what scholars consider an incredibly detailed cartography of the path to liberation. I want you to think of this not as a chapter in some philosophy book, but as an intricately drawn map charting out every single cognitive milestone you have to pass on the journey toward ultimate freedom from suffering. 73. The Paṭisambhidāmagga meticulously categorizes 73 distinct types of knowledge. It leaves no stone unturned. It starts with the absolute basics, like understanding the simple impermanence of a passing thought, or just recognizing a physical sensation as it arises and falls away. And from those fundamental building blocks, it scales all the way up to identify 6 exclusive types of knowledge that belong only to the Buddha. This includes concepts like sabandhutanana, which is total omniscience, and anavaranana, meaning completely unobstructed knowledge. It provides a comprehensive, unbroken taxonomy spanning from basic human intellect all the way to superhuman awareness. And then there's 40. The text also outlines 40 specific analytical angles to systematically dismantle the illusion of the self, which they called Sakyaditthi. It does this by examining the 5 aggregates. Those are the physical and mental components that supposedly make up a human being. Imagine reverse engineering a car. You take it apart piece by piece until you realize, hey, there's no single magical car particle, it's just a temporary assembly of gears, wires, and metal. That is exactly what this text does to the human ego.
It gives you 40 distinct, actionable tools for Vipassana and Samatha practice, all designed to surgically remove our deeply ingrained belief in an independent, permanent self.
Section 4, the 3 core sections, a structural blueprint. So you might be wondering, how do you organize an analysis this massive without totally losing the reader? Well, the entire text is divided into 30 total specialized discussions known as kathas. And those 30 discussions are perfectly organized into 3 primary categories, or vaggas.
The logical flow of this entire system is just functionally brilliant. First up, we have the Mahavagga, which lays down the absolute foundation of wisdom. Once that foundation is rock solid, you move to the Yuganadhavagga. This slice is all about integration, specifically how to balance calming meditation, known as samatha, with insight meditation, known as vipassana. Think of samatha as a perfectly steady hand, and vipassana as a high-powered microscope. You absolutely need both of them working together to see the truth clearly. Finally, the culmination is the Panavagga, which deals entirely with the advanced levels of higher knowledge and ultimate enlightenment. It's a literally flawless architectural design for the mind.
So, did this highly structured ancient text actually have a lasting impact? Oh, absolutely. Scholars point out that the Paṭisambhidāmagga had an immense, direct influence on the creation of the Visuddhimagga, which was written centuries later by the great commentator Buddhaghosa. Many of the core frameworks in the Visuddhimagga were synthesized directly from Sariputta's original work right here. Today, the Visuddhimagga is globally recognized as the definitive gold standard for Vipassana meditation in the Theravāda world. This ancient map literally drew the borders for our modern meditation practices. Section 5. Ancient Wisdom, Modern Science, 21st Century Relevance. Now, we don't have to stop at ancient history or traditional meditation. Let's bring this explainer right into the 21st century. Because what is truly mind-blowing to researchers today is how this ancient logic-based framework perfectly aligns with our current technological and scientific landscape.
It is genuinely wild to realize that modern academic researchers and experts in Buddhist philosophy often refer to the teachings in this text as a mental science. The way the Paṭisambhidāmagga outlines the sequential, step-by-step development of mindfulness perfectly mirrors the highly structured approaches we use in cognitive science and psychology today. It treats the human mind as a highly predictable, observable, and fundamentally optimizable mechanism.
And here is the absolute climax of our explainer. Because this text is so incredibly logical and meticulously categorized, it's literally being integrated into modern digital knowledge management, or KM, systems today. In our digital age, educators and technologists are taking the profound organizational models from this 2,000-year-old text, its hierarchical knowledge trees, its precise semantic tagging, its categorical ontology, and they're using them to structure modern digital databases and learning models. They are using an ancient map of enlightenment to help brand new generations access, organize, and navigate massive amounts of information. Preserving this text isn't just about keeping some old tradition alive, it's about protecting a highly functional piece of humanity's intellectual heritage that is actively solving complex data problems today.
Which leaves us with this final, incredibly powerful question. We live in an age of total information overload, constant digital distraction, and really unprecedented modern anxiety. If an ancient text could map out the human mind so perfectly that its logical frameworks are being actively used to organize our digital databases today, how can we use this ancient mental science to manage our own minds? Could systematically mapping our own knowledge, analyzing our daily realities, and ruthlessly deconstructing our illusions be the key to ending our very modern suffering? I highly encourage you to think about how you categorize your own thoughts today. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep exploring!